Welcome to my channel. My name is Leia. In today's video, I'm going to be reading Sunrise on the Reaping. I reread the original Hunger Games trilogy, and then I read A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I have videos posted on my channel if you're interested to see my thoughts and feelings on those books. You could also like the videos. You could also subscribe to my channel. Only if you want to, though. Finally, I'm going to be reading Sunrise on the Reaping. I feel like for the most part, a lot of people really like this book, so I'm excited to get into it. I also really like Haymitch as a character, so I'm excited to read about his perspective and like his background and where he's come from. I haven't heard much about this book other than people find it really, really sad. So that sucks. I'm traveling to my parents' house this weekend, so my plan is to listen to the audiobook on the long drive that I have there and back. We'll see how much I can get through the book and how much the audiobook irritates me. This video is also going to be full of spoilers, so if you haven't read Sunrise on the Reaping, I wouldn't watch this video. I always tell myself I'm just gonna read it and give my thoughts, but then I end up recapping the entire plot. Like, I can't help it. It's just who I am. I'm really excited to get started, so I'll check back in when I actually have an update. Okay, hi, I'm back home. I'm currently making sourdough bread. This is what she looks like right now. I listened to Sunrise on the Reaping on my way there and back, and I think I'm about halfway through the book. It is so good. I love it so much. I almost don't want to finish it because I just want to savor it because I'm enjoying it that much. I just think so far in the story, she's incorporated characters from both A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and also Hunger Games, where it's just fun to get background on characters that you didn't really think that you were going to like hear about ever again. It's a nice transition from reading about President Snow, who's extremely unlikable, to someone that you actually care about and are rooting for, even though you kind of know what his ending is. The beginning of the book is Haymitch's 16th birthday, and Haymitch was born on the day of the reaping. Haymitch lives in the Seam with a single mom and a younger brother. His father had passed away when he was young. He's also dating a girl named Lenore Dove. And Lenore Dove is a part of the Covey, which was what Lucy Gray was a part of in A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So Lenore Gray's dad was Lucy Gray's cousin, I believe. Haymitch also distributes white liquor that is made by an old woman who I completely forgot her name. I think it starts with an H. But explicitly in the beginning of the book, he talks about how he doesn't drink and he's not interested in drinking, which is extremely sad given what we know about what happens to him at the end of the book. Haymitch is also friends with Katniss's dad, which makes sense given like the age gap, but I also think it's kind of crazy that that was never brought up in the Hunger Games itself. It's also just like kind of fun to be able to see that storyline, and we're like getting background on Katniss's parents comes into play when Katniss is like reaped when it's her turn. I don't know, I just love it. It's also the 50th anniversary of the Hunger Games, so they're reaping 4 tributes from each district instead of 2. A young girl named Luella gets reaped, and she only lives a couple houses down from Haymitch, so it hits really close to home because he knows her personally. They used to grow up together. The second girl that gets reaped, her name is Maisie. Maisie, okay, I need to get this right. Maisie has a twin sister, and they both live in town, and they're friends with Katniss's mom. And Haymitch doesn't like her. He views her as this like snooty, preppy girl. It's also rare for a person who lives in town to be reaped because they only have to put their name in the required amount, comparatively to people in the Seam who are not as well off that need to put their name in again and again each year to get resources from the government. Then this other guy gets reaped whose name is, I literally can't remember his name. When the second male tribute gets reaped, instead of walking to the stage, he tries to run away, and then a peacekeeper shoots him on the spot. The Capitol escort named Drusilla, she sucks, by the way. She starts yelling at everyone to get it cleaned up so that she can re-pull the names and basically pretend like that never happened. And so we're learning that the recording of the reaping isn't really live. The mother of the boy rushes over to his body and she will not let the peacekeepers let him go. And then Lenore Dove gets involved and she tries to stick up to the peacekeepers for the mom. Haymitch sees all this going down and he goes over there to try to protect Lenore Dove because she's now gotten herself involved. A peacekeeper ends up punching him in the face, and then Drusilla walks over to him and is basically like, oh, I think we found our fourth tribute, and forces Haymitch to go down to the stage and pretend like his name was naturally pulled. Plutarch is there, and he basically makes a deal with Haymitch's mom and younger brother that if they like act out expressions of when Haymitch got reaped, then he would allow them to have like a minute together before Haymitch is sent to the arena. Haymitch saying goodbye to his family was extremely sad. It was a rough part of the story, and his younger brother Sid is just so young. He's about to be the age where his name starts getting put into the lottery. Also, for Haymitch's birthday, Lenore Dove gives him a flint striker that is part snake, part songbird that he wears around his neck, and that's what he takes with him to the Capitol. While all the tributes are on the bus, Haymitch has a conversation with Luella and they decide that they're going to form an alliance between those two. I feel like it's not really in Haymitch's best interest to join an alliance with her. I don't think she really contributes much. She's pretty weak. She's like 12. I just think because he knows her, he feels like he needs to protect her. And he just likes her and wants her companionship. So that's why he's kind of teaming up with her. But Plutarch and other Capitol workers within the train try to kind of like butter up the tributes. They like feed them this really nice food. They bring out a cake because it's Haymitch's birthday. And Haymitch, along with the other tributes, get pissed off by this because it's very clear that the Capitol views all of the districts as lesser than. But once they are selected as tributes, they try to act like they're treating them like they're equal, when in reality, they're about to be like sent to their slaughter. Maisley's like a mean girl, but in a way that makes you like her. She's like very open about her opinions and she's very critical to other people. But then she starts doing it to people that suck. Like she starts bullying Drusilla, but like in a way where Drusilla deserves it. So I'm like, damn it, I like you. The guy along Haymitch that got reaped was Wyatt. His family is a bunch of bookers. So in the district, they will make bets on the tributes that get reaped of like who's going to win, who's not going to win. His family does that, which is deeply frowned upon on other people within the district because it's like kind of fucked up. They're like, you're making money off of the slaughter of our own people by placing bets. But Wyatt isn't necessarily a part of that, but what he does is he calculates the probability. So he's using that to his advantage as a tribute because he can look at Haymitch or Luella or really anyone and kind of calculate the probability that they're going to win. The tributes also don't have a mentor because no one else besides Lucy Gray has ever won the Hunger Games. And obviously they are silencing Lucy Gray's Hunger Games because that was a giant disaster. So what they're doing is they're taking victors that weren't selected to be mentors for their own districts, and then they're becoming the mentors for District 12. Haymitch's glam team is a bunch of students from the Capitol. Also, District 12's stylist is notoriously shitty. Like, he just puts them in the same coal mining uniforms year after year after year. When they get into their chariot, everyone from the Capitol that's like lined up to watch the tributes go through the parade are super drunk, and a guy sets off a firework that startles their horse. There's a crash and Luella falls off the chariot and she dies. Haymitch takes this extremely personally because he obviously wanted to protect her and she didn't even make it into the arena. As Haymitch is kind of accepting the fact that Luella is now dead, he sees peacekeepers coming in and in a moment of panic picks her up and kind of runs away with her because he doesn't know what they're gonna do to her body, and he obviously wants to honor her death in a respectful way. He hijacks a chariot from, I think, District 1, and it goes straight to President Snow's mansion. And President Snow is standing on the balcony. He sets her down and just starts like clapping to President Snow. He's basically trying to make a spectacle of Luella's death and also kind of make President Snow own what he has done, which is, again, murder innocent children for the sake of this, like, ongoing war he believes in. So I feel like that was a pretty insane way to protest towards President Snow. All the tributes are eventually escorted back to their, like, housing, and they finally meet their mentors, Virus from District 3 and Mags from District 4. I just, like, wasn't expecting that. I don't know why. I just thought it was gonna be some, like, random ass people that didn't give a shit about them. It's really cool because now we get backstory from Virus and Mags's experiences in their first Hunger Games, because obviously they re-enter the Hunger Games in Catching Fire. I think it's just really cool how she incorporated them into this story. It's also kind of fun to see the relationships that Haymitch has with these people, because he obviously knows everyone, but we don't really know how, when he is the mentor for Katniss and Peeta. So the next day, when they go into training, Haymitch meets a young boy named Ampert, who is one of the tributes from District 3. He is 12 years old and is asking Haymitch to join an alliance. And he tells Haymitch that he's trying to get all of the districts outside of the careers to alliance together to go against the careers to give other districts a fighting chance of actually winning the game. And then Ampert kind of makes a comment like, oh, I'm gonna go tell my dad. And Haymitch is like, what are you talking about? And he's like, oh, my dad is one of the training experts. And Haymitch goes over to him and it ends up being Beetee. I always thought his name was Beatree. It's Beetee. I learned that in the audiobook. So as Haymitch is talking to Beetee, we learn that Beetee was able to override the Capitol's communication system. And as a punishment, the Capitol reaped Beetee's son to be in the Hunger Games and then made Beetee a training specialist to force him to watch. Ambert's extremely intelligent, but he is very tiny and frail. He's like literally 12 years old. Like Beetee knows that Ampert is gonna die. After talking to both Virus and Beetee, they basically say that the arena is essentially a machine and there's always a way to hack the machine or outsmart it. And so Haymitch tries to ask Beetee what he can do to outsmart the machine. And then he shakes Haymitch's hand goodbye and slips him like the nuts and bolts that is needed to create this like potato structure. As the tributes are returning home from the training center, they make a pit stop at Plutarch Heavensby's house. They tell Haymitch that he needs to get out because President Snow wants to talk to him. Plutarch offers him a drink and Haymitch is like, no, I don't drink. And he's looking through the selection that Plutarch has. He sees a liquor that says Nepenthe. And Plutarch's like, oh, you probably don't know what that is. And Haymitch is like, actually, I do know what Nepenthe is. He recognizes the word Nepenthe because it's in the song that Lenore Dove was named after. And him and Lenore Dove have discussed what the meaning of the song is. The song is about a man that drinks Nepenthe to forget about a love that he has lost. And the love that he lost, her name is Lenore. I hate that so much. That is just like a really fucked up, terrible piece of foreshadowing that like I didn't need to read about that. Eventually President Snow comes into the room. He starts like choking and hacking up blood and he says that he needs milk. Plutarch has Haymitch go to his little mini fridge to grab milk for President Snow, and instead of grabbing the milk, Haymitch takes the carton and chugs it all in one gulp and then is like, you're out of milk, sorry. And so then like Plutarch leaves the room to go get more milk. Also, it's moments like this where I'm like, oh, I understand why Katniss and Haymitch fought all the time, because they are the same exact person. It's like, I didn't realize when we were reading The Hunger Games how much Haymitch has already rebelled against the Capitol. Anyway, President Snow eventually gets his milk. So President Snow eventually comes to, and he makes this weird comment that he ate some bad oysters, but he fared better than the parade master. This is also in line with what we know about Snow in the future, with all like the sores in his mouth, because he's notorious for just like poisoning a bunch of people. He has a conversation with Haymitch about Haymitch's life and the stunt he pulled with Luella at the parade. Snow takes a look at Haymitch's necklace. He hints at the fact that he knows that it's a flint striker, but I don't think he really cares. And then he sees an inscription from LD that Haymitch didn't notice himself. And Snow starts guessing what Lenore's name is. And he starts to kind of reveal how much he knows about the Covey people. Snow starts to guess Lenore's last name because he knows that she's named after a color, how the Covey people love color and they love music and they love songbirds. And he's like, let me guess, Lenore will talk about the future as if you're not really a part of it, which is accurate because I think like they have this nomadic spirit within them where they just want to leave because they weren't technically even from Panem. Anyway, Haymitch is really creeped out by this because he obviously doesn't know President Snow's backstory. So Snow then moves on to threatening Haymitch, and he says that they have mutts created to kill very specific districts. So he basically tells him if he pulls another stunt like he did with Luella, then he's going to have a mutt kill Haymitch as opposed to Haymitch being able to die a quick death. And then after that, Snow tells Haymitch that he has a birthday present for him, and he tells someone to come out. And when Haymitch looks over, it's Luella standing there. And that's the end of part 1. Haymitch looks over and sees Luella standing there, and he's like, what the fuck? How is that even possible? Because he watched her brain bleed out on the street. I continued on to listen to part 2 because I couldn't just stop after that. We find out that it's not actually Luella. It's a girl that looks eerily close to Luella. And it's very clear that she was drugged or tortured into thinking that she's Luella. Snow is basically like, you're going to take care of her. You're going to play along with this and protect her in the Hunger Games as you actually would with Luella. Because the Capitol doesn't want to reveal her death quite yet because it makes them look like they're incompetent. He brings her back to the house and explains what happened to Mags and Wyrus and the other tributes. The girl's really creepy because they'll like ask her what's going on and she'll be like, I'm Luella. I had to call her Lulu because it's too painful to pretend that she's actually Luella. So then when Haymitch goes to bed that night, he's awoken by Beetee entering his room and sneaking him out. Wyrus cut the power and they only have a few minutes to discuss how Haymitch can break the arena if he's serious about actually breaking it. Beetee explains to Haymitch that the gamekeeper actually stays in a subterranean level within the arena and controls what happens in the arena from a computer. The computer is basically the arena's brain, and they need to find a way to destroy the computer's brain in order to break the arena. There's also a water reservoir underneath the arena, so if Haymitch can find a hatch within the arena, it'll take him underground where he can access the water and destroy the tank, and it will flood the entire arena, including the arena's brain, and it'll break the entire machine. Beetee says that Haymitch will need to access it through a mutt portal. Beetee also says that they're working on some way to sneak materials within the arena so that Haymitch will be able to assemble a bomb and place the bomb on the water reservoir. Beetee also says that Ampert will help him. The next day is when they go in front of the gamekeepers to like present to them some special skill so that they will get like a rating. So this is where I ended in my audiobook journey. I am a little less than halfway through the book. I just checked my Libby app and I need to return this book tomorrow. So I have about 5 hours left. I'm in the process of making sourdough. I have to go to the store and buy a Dutch oven for my sourdough. Anyway, we'll see. This will be like a really fun game of can I finish the book in time? I really don't want to renew it. Like the book is genuinely so good. It doesn't even feel like work. Like I really don't mind sitting on my ass and reading this for 5 hours. I'm actually kind of excited. Okay, hi. So I finished Sunrise on the Reaping. I'm feeling really good and emotionally stable. Oh my god, sorry, I'm like still actively processing what I just read. And according to my therapist, I am an external processor, so you're just gonna hold my hand and we're just gonna go through this together. So I left off when Haymitch was about to present himself in front of the gamekeepers. Doesn't even do anything. He basically just tries to uphold this rascal personality where he's like a rule breaker, but he doesn't want to go like so far to be a rebel. They're not really eating it up. So they ultimately ask him like, okay, so are you willing to turn your back on all of them and eventually have to kill them? And he's like, well, you're willing to kill them all. Why shouldn't I? They didn't really like that, and they ended up scoring him a 1. I think it's the lowest score that anyone has ever gotten. Right before they go into the arena, Haymitch tells the others that he's gonna fly solo instead of sticking with the other newcomers. His excuse is that he scored so low that there's going to be a target on his back and he doesn't want to put everyone else in danger. But in reality, he wants to separate himself so that he can destroy the water tank underground. The arena itself is beautiful, but then you soon realize that everything within the arena is poisoned, including the water. So the only resources that Haymitch has is the ones that are present within his backpack. Eventually, Lulu finds him. She kept repeating, "Find Haymitch," as if there's like a bug in her ear telling her to do so. Haymitch tries to take care of her, but eventually she finds herself attracted to this bush that ends up being poisonous and she dies. Haymitch then eventually finds Amper, where they proceed with executing their plan of destroying the water tank. When him and Beatty were initially discussing this plan, he made a promise that he would protect Ampert and make sure that his death was like quick and smooth and that Ampert wouldn't suffer. They are able to find a mutt portal, which Haymitch climbs down, and he takes the bomb that Ampert had smuggled in and he destroys one of the water tanks. He was fully expecting to die in this instance, but instead he ends up being able to run back to the ladder and cling himself to it and climb out, but then a bunch of butterfly mutts start attacking him specifically. Ampert is holding this torch that he tosses to Haymitch. Haymitch finds this like gas bush that he sets on fire and kind of hides beneath of, and it kills all of the butterfly mutts. But once he resurfaces, he can't find Ampert anywhere, and he eventually sees a bunch of squirrels that are attacking Ampert, and he tries fighting them off, but ultimately they eat Ampert alive, like quite literally. They eat Ampert until he's nothing but bones. So Haymitch was unable to at least make Ampert's death slow and painless. And so Beatty did in fact suffer because he had to watch his son die a slow, painful death. After Haymitch destroys the water tank, the arena basically short circuits and all the lights go off. Haymitch has this short moment of celebration because he thinks that everyone that has died up until this point did not die a pointless death, because Haymitch was actually able to destroy the arena. However, it slowly reboots itself and the arena is up and running just like as if nothing happened. And then he sees a volcano in the distance start erupting. This is bad news because even though the volcano isn't directly impacting Haymitch, this is where all the newcomers went to gather. So he knows that this volcano explosion is destroying all of his alliances. Oh, something else I forgot to mention is that Wyatt dies in the very beginning of the games when everyone starts flooding towards the cornucopia to get resources. He died protecting Lulu, which honestly shocked me. I did not think that was how he was gonna die. I obviously knew everyone was gonna die except for Haymitch, but I just thought Wyatt's death would be a little more extended. Haymitch eventually finds himself face to face with one of the tributes from District 1. He's about to kill Haymitch until Maisily shoots a poison dart into the side of his neck and he dies. Then Haymitch and Maisily decide that they are going to stick together and be like a two-person alliance. At this point in time, there's not really very many tributes left in the games. Haymitch wants to keep moving north because he feels that he has failed in destroying the arena, and he kind of wants to find the end of the arena to see like what is there. Whereas Maisily wants to go back to the cornucopia to see if there's any resources or to see if there's any other tributes on their side that they can pair up with, particularly a tribute named Welly. They end up finding this maze with a bunch of like poisonous ladybugs. Haymitch is convinced that they need to get through this maze because he thinks that something might be there. Maisley doesn't really understand Haymitch's motivation to keep going north, and he can't really tell her because they're actively being filmed. There is also a moment where Maisley and Haymitch are fighting off other tributes, and they run into a portion of the arena that's actively being fixed by 3 game makers. The tributes that Haymitch and Maisley were actively fighting, they have this moment of agreement that they're like, no, we're gonna start killing the game makers now. And so Maisley and one of the tributes on the career end both each kill a game maker, and the third one, I think, tries to run and escape, but falls down their little like portal and ends up dying as well. Haymitch and Maisley then run off, and Maisley gets super pissed off at Haymitch because she was like, what the hell? Why didn't you have my back? Why didn't you kill the other game makers? And Haymitch says that he basically froze, and in that moment, he himself doesn't know why he didn't try to attack them. They end up finding a blowtorch that they use to set the maze on fire, and it allows them to go to the edge of the map. The very edge of the arena is a cliff, and when Haymitch looks down, he sees another generator. He tries throwing a stone at it, and then he discovers that when he throws something off the edge of the cliff, there's a force field that causes it to ricochet back. And at this point in time, Haymitch and Maisley decide that they are going to part ways. However, both of them are kind of unsure if they actually want to do it, because they know that if they eventually kill all of the careers off, it's going to be a standoff between all the newcomers. Maisley decides that she's going to go back to get some potatoes that she left outside of the maze, and then she's going to come back, and then they could discuss how they want to move forward. However, when she leaves to go get her potatoes, Haymitch hears her scream, and he runs over, and there's a bunch of birds attacking Maisley. He puts together that the Capitol sicked mutts on her in retaliation to her killing a game maker. That was a really hard scene to read emotionally, because I think of all the tributes outside of Haymitch, obviously, we get to know her the most. He also has this line where he talks about how Maisley is like a sister to him. I actually can't talk about it because it's like I'm getting choked up just thinking about it, but it's so sad that she dies. She doesn't fight, and she just lets the birds take her life, and she was able to die in the way that she intended. She didn't want to scratch and claw her way out. She wanted to die a respectful death and didn't want the Capitol to take that away from her. Before she does die, she tells Haymitch, you or Welly have to win this, because at this point in time, it's Haymitch, Welly, and Silka, who is the last career left. Oh, yeah, and after Maisley dies, Mags sends Haymitch a carton of strawberry ice cream, because earlier in the book, Maisley makes a comment about how she likes strawberry ice cream. I'm not doing well, and we haven't even gotten to the worst part yet. Haymitch eventually finds Welly in a tree, and she's on her way out. She's starving to death. He tries to kind of like coax her back to life, but she can't even get solid food down because she's so weak. He eventually carries her down the tree. They go into a cave, and he leaves her temporarily to try to find supplies to make a fire so that he can boil potatoes so that she can actually eat something. Haymitch also realizes that Maisley's token that she was wearing around her neck is another bomb. I don't think that Maisley herself even realized that her token was a bomb, but Haymitch finds this out, and he's now determined to use that bomb to try to destroy another generator. Anyway, he leaves, and he's unable to find any supplies to make a fire, and then he eventually gets a sponsor gift, which he opens up to be a decanter of milk. This is clearly from President Snow, basically being like, yeah, bitch, remember when I was choking to death and you drank all my fucking milk? Oh, you want some milk? Here, damn. Haymitch comes to the conclusion that the milk is probably poisonous, so he doesn't want to obviously poison Welly, and President Snow knows that he would never do that. So Haymitch feels like his only option is to drink the milk and poison himself and pray to God that Welly wins the games, because it wouldn't make sense for him to dump what's seemingly like a perfectly good gift away. But I don't really understand about this part is why Haymitch gives a shit about how he's perceived across the Capitol. I don't get why he can't just dump the milk out. And it kind of like made sense while I was reading it, but now as I'm like sitting here trying to explain it, it doesn't really make sense to me. If you planned on dying anyway, who gives a shit if it doesn't make sense that you dump out the milk? Regardless, he doesn't even have to make the decision, because as he's trying to figure out what to do with it, he hears Welly scream. And so then he runs over to the cave and he sees that Silka has come and decapitated Welly, and he's so angered by this death that he takes out his axe. Well, Silka also have an axe, and they basically start hacking away at each other, trying to kill each other. Haymitch eventually runs through the maze that he destroyed a fire through and makes it to the edge of the arena. Silka throws her axe at him and he ducks, but remains down because he knows that her axe is going to come boomeranging back. And it does, and it hits her in the head, and she dies. Before they can scoop him away from the arena, he takes out Maisely's token with the bomb, and he assembles the bomb really fast to throw it against the force field at the edge of the arena. His plan is to throw the bomb at the force field and then just die. That was his way of like completing his mission that he was set out to do. But he doesn't die, does he? And he wakes up in the tribute apartment alone. There's no one to be found, and all there is bread and milk from that motherfucker Snow. The television only turns on. Different clips of previous Hunger Games are shown to him just to like torture him even more and like trigger the shit out of him. And they show him Lucy Gray's Hunger Games while he's watching it, puts together that Lucy Gray was a Covey. That the timeline in which Lucy Gray was a victor is the same timeline of when President Snow was young and most likely a peacekeeper, and he realizes that Snow knew Lucy Gray, especially because Snow was able to recall characteristics of Covey women to Haymitch earlier in the story. Eventually, Haymitch is put into glam. He gets in front of Caesar Flickerman and he watches the Hunger Games recap. He realizes that they manipulated a lot of the footage. President Snow walks out to give Haymitch his crown, and he says to Haymitch, "Enjoy your homecoming." Now Haymitch is shitting his pants because he has realized that President Snow is capable of killing everyone that Haymitch loves. When he eventually makes it back to District 12, his house is set on fire with his mom and his younger brother in it. He tries to run in and save them, but Katniss's dad and Haymitch's other friend pulled him back, and they basically are like, "We tried saving them. There's nothing you can do." Earlier in the book, when Plutarch set up a phone call for Haymitch to be able to speak to Lenore Dove, Lenore Dove told Haymitch that she was being held captive at the base, but Lenore Dove was like, "Oh, don't worry, they're going to release me tomorrow." She most likely lied so that he wouldn't have to worry about her, and he realized that she's still being held captive at the base. Eventually, he does like sneak to her house, and he sees that she's under like house arrest. He's just super relieved that she is alive and okay, and he just like takes a moment to relish in watching her like feed her geese. He eventually runs up to her and they have this like sweet moment where they like hug and kiss. Before Haymitch left for the Hunger Games, he gave a bag of gumdrops to his younger brother Sid, and he told Sid to give it to Lenore Dove as a parting gift while Haymitch was away. So Lenore Dove's holding these bag of gumdrops and they both eat one. Haymitch opens up the bag and sees that they're all blood red, and he realizes this isn't the bag that I gave Sid. So he starts freaking out and tells Lenore Dove to try to spit it out. And Lenore is poisoned. And she dies. And Haymitch, of course, blames himself because he's like, "I'm the one that fed her the gumdrop." And then she died because he didn't have the foresight to think that they were poison gumdrops from President Snow. And before Lenore Dove passes away, she says, "You have to promise me to stop the sunrise on the reaping." Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry. Anyway, so she's dead. Everyone's dead. And it becomes crystal clear to Haymitch that President Snow is sending him a message that anyone Haymitch loves and anyone he will ever be close to will die. And that is his punishment for rebelling against the capital. So Haymitch starts pushing everyone away. So he lives the rest of his life drunk and in isolation. He has no reason to live anymore. Everyone that he loves is dead, and anyone else that he loves, he can no longer get close to. But he stays alive because he made a promise to Lenore Dove on her deathbed that he would see it that the sun no longer rises on the reaping. So then we get an epilogue, and it's the future, and we get a very short chapter of Haymitch's perspective throughout the original Hunger Games trilogy, where he talks about meeting Katniss and Peeta and how he didn't want to be close to Katniss and Peeta, but eventually his walls came down and he finally was able to live long enough to see the sun no longer rise on the reaping. And it wasn't him that made it happen, but he said he had a hand in it, so he was able to fulfill his promise to Lenore Dove. Oh my god. Basically, at the end, he tells Katniss and Peeta his story, and I'm fine. I'm fine. Katniss and Peeta find geese eggs that they hatch so that Haymitch can take care of geese like Lenore Dove did. Anyway, yeah, just like a dumb, stupid ending that didn't mean anything to me at all and didn't make me emotional in the slightest. In all honesty, it was so sad. I was bawling my eyes out. I would say starting from chapter 26 until the end, I don't know the last time I cried harder. Overall, the book, it was really good. I don't know what you want me to say. I feel like it's the closest feeling that I could possibly get to what it felt like when I was a teenager reading The Hunger Games for the first time. I kind of already mentioned this, but I personally loved how she tied everything into the previous books. I read some reviews where people were saying that she was pushing it to make it work, but like, I didn't feel that way. I thought it was all pretty believable in the context of the story. I just think it really changes the way you view the Hunger Games, and I think it even enhances the original trilogy. I really enjoyed being able to read his perspective, even though it was emotionally devastating and horrible. I rated this a 4.5 stars. I do think some points of it were like dragged on a little bit. I feel like I can't fully articulate why it wasn't like a solid 5 stars. It's more of just this feeling. But I think the reason I found this to be so good is because I reread the trilogy and read A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes right before I read this. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. If you made it this far, this concludes my videos on the Hunger Games. Yeah, I think that's it for the video. I'm gonna go stare at a wall. Okay, bye.